Reddit, what is the fastest way you've seen a room full of happy people turn real ugly and sour? What happened? Owner of one of the companies I worked for had us all go to this fancy meeting at a hotel. We get there, and he announces a few things. We had been bought out by another company. Our company stock was going to sell for nearly double what we paid for it. We were all getting sign-on bonuses from the new company, and we were all being kept. Then he walked off the stage. The owner of the new company walked up rather pissed looking and announced our office was closing. And none of that was true. That's a classic Michael Scott move. I was on a tour of Santorini. The last event for the day was taking a real looking pirate ship out to a natural hot spring where you could jump in. The boats kept smoking and malfunctioning and we were sent back to shore twice. We waited for over an hour. Finally they had to cancel the whole excursion, but they had to make the announcement in 4 different languages. I literally watched the disappointment hit the crowds in waves. The Germans groaned, then the French, then the Greek, and finally my one language speaking brain got the message. I still feel cheated out of my pirate hot tub experience. I was just about to ask what language you speak before I realized that I'm an idiot. My father and I used to spend our holiday in a small Austrian town. Every summer there was a village festival and a shooting competition. Winning the shooting competition was a big deal. If you won you would be crowned Schützenkönig aka Marksman King. So my father, a Dutch citizen, won the past 3 years. The locals had enough and decided to practice for an entire year to win back their title. The results were always published in front of a few hundred pretty drunk people. So when they finally announced the winner of the competition it turned out to be a 15-year-old Dutch boy, me. I have never seen a crowd turn cranky so fast. Your dad must have been laughing his butt off. My friend's grandmother died just after midnight on New Year's a few days ago. That party turned sour real freaking quick. She was in the front room in bed. I don't mean to sound insensitive, which I probably will be, but dying in bed next to your loved ones all festive and joyful sounds like a great way to go. I wish I would die like that. Hope your friend's okay. Had a 40-ish-year-old patient come into the ER in cardiac arrest, CPR in progress, intubated, the whole shebang. If you've never seen this happening in real life, it's a pretty crazy scene. Basically a few firefighters, paramedics and EMTs come crashing through the bay doors and are met by a gang of doctors, nurses and techs who then crowd into a small room together and transfer the PT from one gunny to another. From there it's coordinated chaos. Medics giving reports, docs giving orders, nurses starting IVs on any place they can find, techs hooking up monitors and switching out on CPR etc. It's nuts. Family will follow shortly behind, so we try to set up a few chairs behind the curtains for them to sit in so they don't pass out or get in the way. Anyways, this patient's son was brought back to the room. We had the curtains closed. Patient usually ends up naked, so someone pulled a chair up for him. It is intensely scary to see people poking, prodding and thumping on your loved one's chest, so we don't open the curtain unless they ask us to. We worked the PT up for a while but she wasn't responding, so our doc called time of death and walked out of the room. The techs stay in the room with the body. We clean up and normally remove whatever interventions, IV, S, ET tubes, monitors, unless it's a coroner's case, as in, needs a post-mortem done to find out the cause of death. This patient was young and healthy, so we needed to wait for the coroner to come get her, which meant everything stays on, even the monitors. We clean up a bit so family can come back to say goodbye, but when I go to tell the son, he is already gone. Apparently another tech directed him to a private waiting room we use for family of critical patients. I go to the room, where 7 or 8 family members have now gathered, to tell them they can come back to see the patient now. To my surprise, everyone seems pretty upbeat, teary-eyed but hopeful. That's when I hear a snippet of the phone conversation one of them is having. She says something like she's going to be okay. Her heart is beating again, frick. Apparently the son mistook the pulseless electrical activity showing on the monitor as meaning she was still alive, and when we stopped CPR he ran off to update his family. Another family member asks me how is she doing, when can we see her, and I freeze up immediately. A techs do not make death notifications, doctors do, so I had to back out of the room to find a doc who could tell them the bad news. Oh my god. That room went from hopeful to heartbreaking in a second flat. I had to walk away. The looks on their faces were unbearable. I avoid having to fetch family like the plague now. TLDR. Family thought their loved one had regained a heartbeat and survived cardiac arrest. Had to crush them by telling them that she was actually already dead. We were at a Christmas party last year when one of the guests slapped the host's 9-year-old son hard on the face because he started telling the other younger kids that Santa wasn't real in front of everyone. That caused people to leave immediately or to take sides in an argument over whether he should have done that to the kid. Christmas party. About 30 friends but mostly family gathered at our house. I was just a kid. Argument. Daddy slaps mama in front of everyone. This reads like an old country song. In a bar many years ago. No idea what the issue was, but two guys got into an argument. One mental giant decided it would be cool to end the argument by breaking a beer bottle and threatening the other guy with the broken end. Mood of the entire place changed instantly. Last time I was in a bar and an argument went that way, the bottle breaker was treated to someone else hitting him with a brass tool and then an immensely fat woman sitting on him until the cops arrived. Kodiak, Alaska is a heck of a town. That guy making loud jokes about diddlers when everyone else at the party knew that one of the hosts had been severely abused as a child. You can joke about literally anything to anybody, but the further into the dicier topics, the better your joke needs to be. If you're gonna do a diddler joke and there's known victims there, you need to be a generational talent. If you're just some frickin' jamoke, stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. KFC ran out of chicken. The KFC across from the buffet restaurant where I worked would run out weekly. Then my boss would sell them chicken for $250 a case, more than double price. This went on for a while until they fired the KFC manager. Gender reveal party. They had the ultrasound the day before. A mutual friend cooked a huge meal and all friends and family were invited to eat and find out the gender of the baby. Opened the box. Pink balloons pop up, and everyone cheered. But right away they told us the baby was very sick and would not likely make it full term and, if it did, would be severely deformed, and wouldn't likely survive the first 24 hours. They told us they decided to terminate the pregnancy. From cheers and high fives, to crying hugs of support. We were shocked that it was announced that way, but what were they going to do? Cancel the gender reveal party and have to repeat the circumstances over and over? Story has a happy ending. They tried again, and now my wife and I are godparents. It's a little strange that they still did the theatrics of opening the box and stuff, but they probably weren't sure just how to break the news either. It was good they were able to get the news out there to everyone at once though. I did a Wendy's run to buy the gang a few Baconators, to get home and realize they didn't put bacon on any of them. When I was in 3rd grade, we were doing arts and crafts and we each were assigned to a group of like 4 students. My group was in the middle of cutting paper to make whatever we were crafting at the time, using those little kid safety scissors. Me being the class clown, was cracking jokes the whole time and I made this one girl laugh hysterically. As she was laughing and trimming her paper, with my scissors I'll let her borrow, she was flailing her arms around, until she stabbed the scissors handle deep into her thigh. It was one of those moments where everyone was laughing and just all of a sudden it became super quiet as we were shocked that this girl just stabbed herself in the leg. The girl, after stabbing herself, took a long pause, then eventually looked down at her leg and started screaming louder than I have ever heard someone scream. The whole classroom including the teacher went into a crazy panic, running around not knowing how to handle the situation. I let her keep my scissors. Safety scissors. Don't know if that makes it better or worse. My time to shine. My band played a show at a seedy bar in Myrtle Beach. After our set we were outside smoking as the next band was playing. From outside I felt the mood change, and when I turned to look back in the window I saw all the room lights were on and there was a full-scale brawl going on where there had been a regular set seconds ago. Turned out there was some drunk idiot who had broken a beer bottle and had been swinging it around in the pit and a girl got slashed in the arm. The people with the best viewpoint, the band playing, had immediately stopped playing and jumped off the stage to maul the guy. Dude actually gets out of the venue in one piece, but instead of fleeing like a regular butthole he decided to hide on top of a utility van in the parking lot like an extra stupid butthole, which resulted in an annoyed, and almost amused, cop standing next to it saying "Get down. Get Down. Dot. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. When I was watching election night, all the newsrooms except Fox. Watching 9/11 happen live at the office. Completely ruined Toby's birthday party. Someone called in a bomb threat at my school several years ago during a faculty meeting. The teachers went into full panic mode, screaming at each other cause they had no idea what to do. 1 second everything was perfectly fine, then the room exploded. Figuratively, it didn't actually blow up. Dang, we had drills at school for this though. It was IRA era and we were near an army base. While after Vanilla Ice's popularity, he played some shows at small bar type venues. My friends and I decided to go. As a joke, the atmosphere in the place was really fun, and everybody was having an unusually awesome time. Vanilla Ice didn't go on when announced, and then the DJ took to the mic to announce that he had no-showed. The place instantly went into riot mode, yelling, cursing, pushing and shoving. And then people started throwing beer bottles and breaking furniture. All the mirrors in the place got broken, and the DJ had to run out through the back door. Good times to a full-on riot in under a minute. Over Vanilla Ice. I still don't understand. When I was studying in driving school, last day of theory, everyone was real happy that the studies were over, and we take the school exam, obligatory before DMV exam, and only 2 people passed it out of a 30 people group. Anger and sadness was all around. My grandpa was coughing more than usual, so we urged him to go to the emergency room. He played it off like everything was fine. Everyone was in a good mood until the doctor walked in. It was lung cancer. It had spread all over his body, and he was given a very limited time to live. We all went from cracking jokes with grandpa to full on crying. He passed away less than a month later. It was a church Christmas party with a dirty Santa gift exchange. My mom brought this incredibly tacky plastic cookie jar in the shape of a lion that would roar who's trying to eat my cookies in a silly voice whenever you opened it. It was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen, but to watch a room full of middle-aged church women fight over that cookie jar and get their feelings hurt every time someone stole it from them, and any one of them could have bought an identical one at Walmart for $10. The next year, the rules were changed to limit stealing. I was in the 3rd grade and we had just finished a weeks-long lesson on space and the solar system. There was a shuttle launched planned and the whole school gathered in the cafeteria to watch it live on TV. We all counted down and cheered during liftoff. Then imagine a room full of very confused elementary students watching the Challenger shuttle explode on live TV. We were all in stunned silence as the teachers scooted us out of the room. All of the teachers were holding back tears. The rest of the day was really quiet. This is mine too, except it wasn't on TV. We were on a field trip to the KSC visitor complex, so we were watching it from the lawn in front of the complex, right on KSC. The ride home was probably the only time teachers have ever wished a bus full of grade schoolers wasn't so quiet. Around 12 years ago, I had been working behind the bar at my local rugby club. One of the regulars was having his 40th birthday in the function room. He'd invited a bunch of people from the next town over who always had a rugby rivalry. The night had been going fine till around 9:30 when a minor scuffle broke out in the middle of the room. We were flat out at the bar and our boss was nowhere to be seen, so couldn't stop to see. About half a minute later she legged it back to the bar screaming to pull the shutters and stop serving, as the whole room had erupted into a mass brawl. I remember looking up to see a current, at the time, Rugby International who was a friend of the birthday boy and from the town we were in, trying to throw people away from each other unsuccessfully. I was working with 2 other lads who played rugby, so anytime it kicked off we could handle it reasonable well, but not this time. Needless to say, police were called and we shut for the night whilst watching the carnage behind the shutters waiting for the coppers. At one point in my life I worked as a delivery driver for a florist events company in Orlando. The company provided flowers to weddings at a steep discount in exchange for getting the flowers back at the end of the night, so that they could be reused for a corporate event the next day. Essentially the flowers were a rental. So I arrived with the company box truck at the time that the reception was supposed to end to find the party is still going strong. I informed them I was there to retrieve the flowers, but apparently they hadn't understood what the agreement had been. Perhaps because they were Puerto Rican and didn't speak English fluently. So now picture a room full of very drunk wedding guests yelling back and forth in Spanish that I was going to take back the flowers that they paid for, and they start shredding the arrangements and telling their guests to take them. Meanwhile the men started puffing the chests out while giving me the crazy eyes. It got to the point that I just noped the frick out. Till you can rent flowers. When I was active in my addiction, one person overdoses and crap gets real. I don't mean this in a humorous way at all. Everyone is afraid to call 911 in the fear of getting in trouble. Hosted a party for the Ohio State, Florida National Championship game. It was the best OSU team I had ever seen. Should have been a coronation. They got slaughtered. Party over before halftime. This is the reason I watch games alone now. At my mother-in-law's funeral, wonderful lady, loved by everyone. The pastor is related by marriage and starts off nice. About a paragraph in, he starts blaming the gays and liberals for the downfall of this nation. Maya Mayal was a very liberal feminist. I've never seen a pastor ushered out of a funeral before. A pastor's job at a funeral is to talk about the deceased, say a few things to comfort the friends and family, and, if the deceased was religious, talk briefly about their faith. Anything else is using the funeral as a soapbox. Got a phone call that my friend's 3-year-old nephew had drowned in a pool he fell into without anyone noticing. One person in the room I was in said that the parents were crappy parents and deserved it for not watching their kid. A fight ensued and punches were thrown. He ended up with a broken nose and no friends. For some reason we were high and spent hours discussing how wearing black clothes makes you die. Flatmate comes in wearing black clothes. Sadness. Was the roommate part of the Dark Brotherhood and you realize people in black actually are the killers and not the victims? I was in London as a young teen air cadet when the London bombings happened. We were at one of the RAF bases in the middle of flying lessons when all of a sudden we were told to shut up as they flicked the news on. Went from many kids' happiest days to our scariest. We were camping at a base in London too for the next week or so as it went to Amber Alert. Scary times. Little late, but at Six Flags Great Adventure in the late 90s, staff decided to close Rolling Thunder on a midsummer weekend so they could take their lunch break. With next shift not yet arrived, we were next in line. People were sad but started walking back out the line, quietly dejected. My dad would not let this affront to park policy stand and started arguing in a loud, but not disrespectful manner. Everyone in line came back and started yelling, agreeing with him. Others started cursing, then started throwing water bottles, causing the ride operators to flee. We quietly slunk out of line, security on our tail, before the fighting started. A fight broke out on the line between the now angry and amped up passengers from my father's rousing speech. My entire family was ejected from the park. It was pretty much the orc fight scene in Lotta. TLDR. Six Flags closed a ride. My dad started a riot. We got tossed out. Playing Cards Against Humanity and having drinks with a couple friends when my wife decided to make mention of the growing crack in their tile floor. The conversation suddenly spiraled into a shouting match between said couple about in-laws and where blame should be placed for the failing aspects of their relationship. There I sat, bigger blacker dong in hand, and all I wanted to do was slap it on the table and for things to go back to normal. I accidentally walked into a hall that was doing a Scientology convention but they were all super friendly so I stayed to see what it was all about. This was pre-South Park Scientology episode times so I hadn't heard of it in any detail. Anyway, the pleasant nature only lasted up until I asked a few logical questions. For instance, why they are okay with being kept in the dark about so much and having to pay money to find out etc. Then they all got very aggressive and surrounded me and all started verbally attacking me. It wasn't shouting and it didn't seem like they would physically hurt me, but they had obviously practiced being intimidating as a group to bully people into conforming. I was in a bar in Abu Dhabi on the night of the Scotland independence referendum. Some drunk Scot, furious at the, entirely predictable, failure of the referendum, decided to glass an English guy sitting at the bar minding his own business. Crap got real quick. It was really close for a while actually and the final vote was only 5% short of a leave majority. We were all drinking and asking questions in a circle. Suddenly someone's turn is up and they ask when you wipe, do you wad or fold? Until this day I never knew there were savages who just wadded up toilet paper. My fellow folders were also disgusted. Everyone started screaming at the top of their lungs at each other. Folders didn't want anything to do with those wadders. My buddy is upstairs with the rest of the party. AJD walks down because he says he hears a ton of people yelling. He walks in and yells, what the frick are y'all yelling about? Someone says, do you fold or wad? And he says, wad. The room erupted into violence. Went to an extended family reunion when I was a young child. Some people I had never met before sat me down and went around the entire room explaining how all these people I had never met were my distant relatives, thrice removed, whatever. Took almost 40 minutes to finish everyone's introductions and such. And I respond, well yeah, except my mother's adopted, so I'm not actually related to any of you. A few years ago I used to date this girl who was, let's just say, headstrong. My mother's students are Japanese and prepared a sushi dinner for us. So, there must have been about 15 of us around this table packed like sardines, and my father decides to make a dirty joke to my ex. The ex, who doesn't take crap from anyone, throws a chopstick at my dad across the table and somehow hits him right between the eyes. Everyone shuts up, and my dad starts to get very red and he can be pretty violent at times. I thought for sure I was going to get beaten up and disowned. Just then, my 8-year-old sister adorably grabs her chopsticks and yells out, can I try too? Everyone started laughing, breaking the tension. Biggest sigh of relief ever. Playing GTA with a friend, in his house, with another pal, I get a text, mid-rampage, that there was an active shooter in my city, killing police. Well, after that, we sort of just sat around and watched the news and listened to the helicopters flying overhead. 2 days later the guy gave himself up after running around town evading police in the woods. Killed 3 officers. Keep in mind this was in East Coast Canada, one of the last places anyone would ever go on a shooting rampage. So we were less freaked out and more weirded out, like it was a dream. 320 days without an injury. Description of incident. 3 supervisors fell from a scaffolding at the same time. It was at my sister's wedding. She invited her good friend not to be in the party as there was only one maid and one groomsman, and to get back at her for this slight, she wore her wedding dress. That got real loud, real quick. I'm imagining people seeing her arrive in that dress and just downing their drinks and jumping right out the window to avoid the inevitable confrontation. In a huge ballroom for a work meeting, about 200 people on a very specific job with long travel demands. HR rep claims it would be out of line for 2 co-workers of opposite gender to dine together when on the road. The entire room literally booed her, myself included. Can't speak for everyone, but part of it to me was the tone of her voice. A gay guy on our team stood up and asked if he has to eat at the girls' or the boys' table. Uproarious applause. We had just been on a study trip to Seattle. The day we were going home, waiting in the airport for our check-in and a couple of sandwiches we were promised. We wait for 1 hour or so before our teacher returns, telling us we will have to sleep in London before continuing to Denmark. And there had been a misunderstanding with the sandwiches, so they would never arrive. People went from happy to go home to sour because of the long waits and no sandwiches. I felt bad for the teacher, since he was solo leading 40 students, age 17-20. Must have been horrible for him, not as much for me. Someone mentioned politics. We had an explicit no politics rule at Christmas dinner this year, only vaguely broken when Grandad chimes in with that Nadia off-grade British Bake Off was on the telly yesterday. She's still wearing that headscarf, you know. Yes, Grandad, she is Muslim. My cousin was hitting on the waitress the entire night at his sweet 16 party. Just got a Beamer. How about you come roll with me and you're the best gift my daddy bought me all night. That type of thing. After he ordered his filet mignon well done, I turned to him and said, you know, she's gonna spit on your meat, right? They call that foreplay where I'm from, and that is where we all drew the line. I was the first to file out of the meeting room and into the main dining hall, and soon everyone else followed, leaving my cousin to celebrate his sweet 16 alone. I mean, come on, what kind of dong orders a steak well done? They call that foreplay where I'm from. That's really clever though. Holiday ham thrown off back porch into creek. Dogs shredded bumper style. The guys in my family all hunt, so one Thanksgiving day my uncle got a little too wasted and starting throwing his butt cause my cousin shot a deer just a little bit bigger than his. And when I say my Thanksgiving dinner turned into a full-on brawl and food fight, I'm not kidding. Over a freaking deer. This happened at least 10x in my childhood. My uncle can't handle it when someone is a little bit better than him. Throwing his butt. What the frick does this mean? You have been visited by the romantic doggo. Comment love is magic so you never fall in the friend zone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.